Welcome to your favourite mystery-busting or trusting podcast. I'm Tiernan.
And I'm Athena. Bust or Trust is the podcast where we unravel the world's greatest mysteries with help from you, our chief detectives.
We present all the best evidence and then ask you to decide. Which team are you on?
Are you a myth buster like me?
Or are you a myth truster like me? We look into all sorts of strange stories from around the world. No mystery is too big for us. Like, see this coin, Athena?
Yeah.
Now, where's it gone?
It's still in your hand.
No, maybe a supernatural force has taken it.
Yeah, and now you've dropped it on the floor. Oh, please stop.
Maybe a ghost dropped it. We will never know. Anyway, we tell you at the end of the show just how to get in touch so you can let us know if you're on Team Buster or the best one, Team Truster.
So, chief detectives, get ready to take notes and start putting together your case while we have a quick word with the grown-ups.
Well, hello there, grown-ups. Did you know that we depend on your generosity and support to keep making Bust or Trust?
If you subscribe and support Bust or Trust on Patreon or Apple Podcasts, you'll get access to lots of lovely extras like weekly subscriber bonus episodes with extra evidence, ad-free listening and early access to all our episodes. More to come soon.
To support Bust or Trust, just click subscribe in Apple Podcasts or visit patreon.com/Bust or Trust podcast. Or for more information, visit our website at bustortrust.com.
The case.
And attempt number 15, go! Guten Tag, ich heiße Tiernan. No, it didn't work. Oh, I'll have to try again.
Ouch, that looked painful.
It was, but sadly not effective.
What exactly are you trying to do, Tiernan? Why do you keep running headfirst into a wall? It's very entertaining for me, but it's also very weird.
Well, sadly, Athena, I can only speak English. I would love to be bilingual, which means knowing 2 languages, or trilingual, which means knowing 3. But I don't have time with all our busting or trusting to learn. So, like this week's case, looking at accidents that cause people to wake up knowing a different language, or as it's also known, Xenoglossy, I'm trying to bump my head so I instantly learn German, or Spanish, or anything really.
Well, firstly, for our chief detectives at home, bumping your head isn't a clever way to do anything, and you definitely should not try it. If anything, Tiernan, I think all that bump in your head is going to make you unlearn things, actually. But before you try it again, what can we tell chief detectives about Xenoglossy, other than it sounds a little bit like a type of fancy nail varnish?
Xenoglossy is the phenomenon where a person can speak, write or understand a foreign language suddenly. You know, unlike how people usually learn languages, slowly through family, school or very popular language apps.
There are 2 types of xenoglossy. One that means you speak in a different language to your own, but you speak incomprehensibly. That means you don't make any sense. The other is where you speak the language as though you have done your entire life and are completely fluent in it, though there is no scientific proof for either of these occurrences being real.
There might not be scientific proof, but it's something that has been occurring for years. Some of the older stories about it were linked with more spiritual incidents, and some people believe it's to do with past lives or that they became possessed by an ancient being, like a woman in the early 1900s who insisted she'd been taken over by a Babylonian princess.
More recently, though, most cases of xenoglossy have simply involved someone being in an accident, and then when they wake up, they are speaking an entirely different language to the one they did before. Or so they say.
Well, they say it in a different language, so I think that proves it.
As I said, there's still no evidence that science can prove it's a real thing.
Hang on. Yetrode. Did that work?
I just saw you Google the Norwegian for I think it is before you ran into the wall. So no, it definitely didn't work.
OK, so it's up to you, Chief Detectives. Is xenoglossy a real phenomenon where people suddenly gain the ability to learn another language?
Or is it something that can be explained by science?
Time for our first piece of... Oh, I feel dizzy.
Tiernan, are you okay?
Pierwszy dowód. That's Polish for first piece of evidence.
Unbelievable.
First piece of evidence.
The first piece of evidence is that mentions of xenoglossy happening to people date back hundreds of years. Except it wasn't always known as xenoglossy then, as that term didn't arrive until it was invented by a parapsychologist in 1905. Instead, it was referred to as speaking in tongues, or a holy miracle. There is a mention of this in the Bible in the New Testament during the Pentecost holiday, where the first disciples of Jesus had the tongues of fire land upon them. This meant they were suddenly able to speak in many different languages and be understood by everyone. This ability was something that became far more common in holy people in the Middle Ages. Saint Dominic, the preacher Vincent Ferrer, the French abbess Colette of Corbie, and the nun Claire of Montefalco were all said to have suddenly gained the miraculous ability to speak in a different language and communicate with people who hadn't previously understood them. The Christian mystic Marjorie Kemp wrote what is thought to be the first autobiography ever written in English in the 1400s, all about her pilgrimages and holy experiences. In the text, she mentions two moments of what is called miraculous translation, where she is suddenly able to speak to a German priest when she had no knowledge of the German language at all, and another when she was suddenly able to read foreign Christian texts.
That would be really handy if you could suddenly speak another language just as you needed it, wouldn't it? But I'm afraid even though it's fascinating, there is no evidence any of these moments of xenoglossy actually happened. Even though it's very cool she wrote the first autobiography in English, Marjorie Kemp was tried for heresy several times, which is when someone was accused of having opinions that weren't in line with what was believed. She had many critics who did not believe her writing was truthful. These are all old accounts, and in the cases you mentioned, they are all linked to religious experiences, which means there is a chance they were exaggerated to encourage people to believe it happened. That way, it helped to create more belief in the religion itself.
It's interesting you say that, Athena, as it wasn't just religious holy people that recounted moments of xenoglossy. But also in the 19th century, there are accounts of a number of spiritual mediums suddenly being able to speak a different language when communicating with the dead. Which must be necessary, as if you haven't learned a new language by the time you're a ghost, it's probably a bit late to start. That makes it seem like xenoglossy is to do with something spiritual happening rather than just religious.
As fun as they might have seemed, psychic mediums of the 19th century have pretty much all been proven to be frauds, using a number of tricks to make people believe they were talking to their dead loved ones and obviously paying a lot for it. They were very skilled in illusions and trickery, but very little of what they did was real. Sadly, the only language those mediums could speak was the language of money.
Oh, I wish I could suddenly learn how to speak that.
Oh, easy. Give me £5 and I'll teach you.
Brilliant, here you go. Wait a minute.
Gotcha.
That was close. There are many more examples of xenoglossy, though, which have no spiritual connection at all, as you'll see in piece of evidence number 2.
Second piece of evidence.
There are many modern cases of people who have had xenoglossy. That is, they've suddenly spoken a different language to their own. And there are loads dating back many, many years. But I think we should look at two of the most recent cases, as that way, Athena, you can't say, oh, it happened ages ago, so we don't have proof, blah, blah, blah.
I would never say that. Well, except when it's the case. Like your last piece of evidence. But xenoglossy is fascinating, so I'm always keen to hear your evidence.
OK then, how's this? The first case is from 2016, so try dismissing this one so easily. Ruben Nsemo in Atlanta was in an accident during a game of American football. He suffered quite a knock to the head and fell into a coma. When he woke up, he was completely unable to speak English, despite that being the only language he'd known his whole life. Instead, what he could do was speak Spanish like a native Spanish person. Ruben said that every time he tried to talk in English, he would start having a seizure, and instead, Spanish felt natural to speak. As he recovered, he regained his ability to speak English again and lost nearly all his fluent Spanish.
You say the only language he knew beforehand was English, but he had heard Spanish a lot from his family and friends. Scientists think that an injury to the brain, like the one Ruben had, causes other parts of the brain to become active to make up for the bit that now isn't. That can create a memory boost, and it may be that all Ruben's memories of hearing Spanish being spoken before became very clear.
But he was fluent in it after the accident, which isn't the same as knowing a few sentences because people close to you have said them. Plus, if he heard them talking Spanish when he was even younger, there's no way he was properly listening, especially if it was all just boring grown-up talk.
Oh, good point. There's no language at all that can make conversations remotely interesting when it's only about what time you've got to go to bed or, yawn, isn't the housing market something, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly. There are other examples, though, where the person who gets xenoglossy knew the language a little bit, but after an accident could speak it properly. In 2010, a 13-year-old Croatian girl had just started learning German at school. Yet after an accident that put her into a coma for 24 hours, she woke up and could speak German fluently. The doctors said they had zero explanation for it. And in 2014, an Australian man called Ben McMahon was in a bad car accident. When he woke up from a coma, he could speak perfect Mandarin. He had learned some Mandarin at school, but he wasn't anywhere near fluent in it. After his accident, McMahon was able to keep speaking Mandarin, getting a job giving tours of Melbourne in Chinese and studying at the University of Shanghai. He even found love on a Chinese dating show.
That is amazing, and I also wish I could wake up one day knowing a whole other language. But like Ruben's case, they did know those languages a bit before. It's not like they suddenly spoke a whole new language they'd never come into contact with. It's called cryptomnesia, where memories from early life reappear after exceptional circumstances. It's not some kind of miraculous overnight learning of a language.
Speaking fluently is very different to remembering some bits from school. How many city tours could you give only knowing the phrases, "Excuse me, can I have the bill please?" and "My cat has gone to do the grocery shopping"?
I think I'd give some great city tours, actually. Who wouldn't want to be walked around hearing about a cat going shopping? There is also something known as foreign accent syndrome, which is where people suffer an injury to the brain that causes them difficulties with speech, and it can often sound like they're talking with a new accent. But that is just how people who hear them interpret it. It is, however, very much to do with how the brain works, and not at all because of a miracle. It's a bit like in these cases of xenoglossy, how if the people hearing the person's new language don't speak it fluently either, then it might not be as accurate as they think. As far as I'm concerned, anyone who speaks any, Hawaiian will sound like they're fluent in it to me because I can't speak any.
Aloha!
I didn't know. You're an expert in Hawaiian, Tiernan. Wow! Our brains are incredible, and scientists still only know what 10% of them can do. In fact, there is more and more research into the parts of our brains that give us spiritual experiences, and it does seem that after an accident, the brain makes up for bits that have been injured by making other connections, using what it has to keep going.
But Athena, even if the people in those examples may have some vague knowledge of the language they've learned, meaning their brains may have made some unusual connections, the final piece of evidence doesn't have anything about it that can translate to an easy explanation.
Third piece of evidence.
The third piece of evidence is the case of Uttara Hadar, or as she occasionally became from her 32nd birthday onwards, Sharada. Uttara was born in 1941 in Nagpur, a city in western India. For the first 31 years of her life, nothing remarkable happened in Uttara's life. Her family spoke Marathi, the official language in the Indian state of Maharashtra. She did well in school and had no recorded health conditions. But then, when she was 32, she suddenly started dressing in the clothes of a married Bengali woman, speaking Bengali, which was not the language she'd grown up with, and insisting she was someone called Sharada. Sharada gave so many clear details about her life in Bengal, where Uttara had never lived, that they thought they traced Sharada back to a woman who lived in Bengal between 1810 and 1830, who sadly died of a snake bite. Sharada would take over for several weeks at a time, and while she did, she'd be completely unable to speak Marathi like Uttara had grown up with, and seemed confused by 20th century tools and items. Sharada also knew traditional Bengali dances and spoke a lot about a man that she was in love with, who it's believed was the husband of Sharada in the 1800s. Was she taken over by a ghost, allowing Uttara to suddenly know a new language and gain a whole new personality? Or had Sharada been reborn as Uttara in a new life? And it just took a while for her to work that out.
It's an amazing story, but for a start, Uttara did have quite an interest in Bengali culture when she was younger, which could have easily led her to pick up a fair amount of the language and customs. And researchers who've looked into this case say Uttara suddenly becoming someone else sounds a lot like dissociative identity disorder, which is a mental health condition where people do have several personalities that they switch between without warning. It's a very difficult condition to live with, both for the people who suffer from it and those around them.
Ian Stevenson, an expert in cases of reincarnation who studied Uttara's case, said that dissociative identity disorder wouldn't mean someone could just know a language in full, so it still could be a case of xenoglossy too.
I'm sorry, but I have to point out that every piece of evidence you've mentioned so far, Tiernan, has a scientific explanation for it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean xenoglossy isn't real.
You know what, though? If it was real, I'm pretty sure we'd have found a way to use it in our everyday lives. Hello, I'm the translator. Where do I need to be?
Ah, great. That's perfect timing. The International Medical Conference is just about to start. You can head to the stage just over there.
Brilliant. And who will the first speaker be?
Oh, it's the Polish delegate.
Great. Could you just hit me in the head with this spade, please?
What?
Yeah, just quickly round this part of my head. Thank you.
If you're sure.
Whoa, dziękuję.
And please welcome to the stage our Polish delegate, Olivia Nowak. To przyjemność być tutaj.
It is a pleasure to be here with you all.
That was great!
We've got no time to lose. Who's next?
It's the Vietnamese delegate.
Right, Vietnamese. Can you quickly slap me around the face with this large fish?
You want me to do what?
Quickly!
Okay.
Come on!
And now the chair of the Vietnamese Medical Association, Xuan Duc Le. Toi zat binh zu doc o dai.
I am honoured to be here today. Okay, just one more left, right? I'm feeling very dizzy.
Yeah, just one. It's the head of the Nepali Doctors Association.
Nepalese. Oh, no, I hadn't planned for that. Oh, quick, drop this large piano right on my head.
Okay, you do seem to know what you're talking about. You stand there. Ready to speak Nepalese? He's on stage in 30 seconds. Hello? Hello? Oh dear. Is anyone here a doctor? Listeners at home, please do not try anything you have just heard. That person was a trained professional translator. Maybe. Probably not. I think I'll stick to my language learning app, Athena.
Yeah, sometimes past and present tenses are hard, but not as hard as a piano landing on your head. Definitely do not try that at home, Chief Detectives.
I don't think that would be a great way to learn to play the piano either. But luckily, our Chief Detectives have a much easier task, which is to decide if xenoglossy, the sudden learning of a new language, is real or not.
Recap the evidence, please, Tiernan.
Evidence recap.
The first piece of evidence is that even before it was known as xenoglossy, people suddenly being able to speak a different language happened many times, especially with holy or spiritual people.
Except we have no evidence for many of these occasions, apart from writings claiming there were miracles or from spirit mediums who have since been outed as frauds.
The second piece of evidence are the cases of several people who, after an accident, were suddenly able to speak a different language to their own.
But in every case, they had learned or heard some of that new language before in their lives. This is something called cryptomnesia, where the brain makes new connections after an accident to make up for the parts that were injured, and it can cause old memories to resurface suddenly.
The final piece of evidence is the case of Uttara Huda, who at the age of 32 suddenly said her name was Shadara, a Bengali woman who'd lived in the 1800s. She was able to speak Bengali fluently, despite not having done ever before.
Researchers think this was a case of dissociative identity disorder, which is a mental health condition that causes people to have several personalities. Uttara, suddenly knowing Bengali, may have been to do with her obsession with Bengali culture when she was younger.
So now we're handing it over to you, Chief Detectives.
What do you think? Are you a xenoglossy mythbuster?
Or a xenoglossy myth truster? Get in touch and let us know your thoughts, and most importantly, which side you're on. In how many languages can you say Team Truster wins this case?
There's clearly a communication error here, as all our Chief Detectives are definitely busters on this case. Send us your voice notes with an explanation of why you're a myth buster or myth truster when it comes to whether xenoglossy is real.
All you have to do is ask your grown-ups to help you email us your voice notes or thoughts to hello@bustortrust.com.
Tell us your name, age, what you think all the evidence means. And please make sure your grown-ups give us permission to use your voice notes or emails in our next episode. You can also send us a question on Spotify Q&A, but please get permission from your parents and don't include any personal details so we can publish them safely. We won't always be able to use all of them.
But we do love to hear them. And here are some thoughts from you lot, our chief detectives, on the last few episodes. We've had this reply from Nicole on our episode about the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter. Hi, my nickname is Chicken. Nicole is not the real name. Oh wow, so your real name is Chicken. That's a good real name. And I am Mythbuster because the aliens could be owls. Also, are you, Tiernan and Athena, siblings?
Tiernan can't be my brother. And if he was, it would have been terrible. He'd have nicked all my food. You'd have been one of those siblings.
It wouldn't. I think we'd have just spent the whole time growing up arguing. So it's probably for the best that we're not.
Possum Princess said about the Warminster thing, science. I am Team Science. P.S. Athena, I love your name. Well, agree with all of it. First of all, Team Science all the way. Look at actual evidence, things that exist, then make your decision. And I can't take the credit for my name. It was given to me when I was born, but I will take the credit because I haven't changed it since. And I could have, but I didn't. So thank you.
Athena, I have to say, I'm just so impressed that the princess of all the possums has got in touch with us, and that's, that she listens to the show. I can't. I just feel humbled.
I'm humbled too.
Phineas has written to us on the Spotify Q&A about our episode on Akiku, the haunted doll, saying, I'm Phineas. Right now I'm a truster because I heard of this haunted doll called Robert the Doll. Whoa, that is a terrifying name. I don't know anything about Robert. I'm assuming if Akiku's hair grows, maybe Robert's toes grow or his bum grows. I don't know, but it sounds terrifying.
Yeah, any doll called Robert is up to something. Robert the doll is up to something.
Yep.
The comments from our chief detectives just keep getting better and better.
Every single time. And if you enjoyed the show, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Amazon Music or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more great episodes. We love to hear what you think, so please do rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps more detectives find, bust or trust. And of course, we'll read out some of the comments on the show.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for more Bust or Trust.
Okay, Athena, I've got it. This is the run into the wall that will give me another language. Watch.
Ooh, that sounded hard. Wow.
Oh, see? It worked, right? I spoke a language I've never spoken before.
Doesn't count. Sorry.
Why not?
Well, on Team Truster, you speak absolute nonsense every week anyway.
I wish I knew how to boo you in as many languages as possible.